Time after time, you try to take this castle, but you will never succeed, Skeletor.
Looks like 2026 and 2027 are shaping up to be way bigger for superhero movies than we expected. We've got some awesome stuff on the horizon, from the live-action Invincible movie and Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse to the return of the dynamic duo. So here's a look at the best upcoming superhero films dropping in 2026 and 2027 and beyond. Let's jump in. Masters of the Universe, June 5th, 2026. The Masters of the Universe movie is actually happening. No joke this time. After years of false starts and scrapped plans, fans can finally get hyped about a new live-action He-Man film. The franchise has been around since the 80s, famous for its toys and cartoons, but when it comes to live action, the only attempt was that 1987 Dolph Lundgren movie. That one's got a bit of cult love, but didn't exactly set the world on fire. This new film is taking a fresh approach, though. It's not tied to any old shows or the Netflix reboot. Instead, it's rebooting the whole thing, starting from scratch. Some longtime fans might miss the throwbacks, but this actually makes sense. It helps new viewers jump in without confusion and gives old fans something new to enjoy without a history lesson. One of the coolest changes? Prince Adam's origin story. Instead of growing up in Eternia with his powers, he's a regular guy raised on Earth. No sword, no powers, just a normal kid. Only later does he get the Sword of Power and gets pulled into the battle for Eternia. It's a new spin, but still keeps the spirit of the original alive. Plus, this fresh start could lay the groundwork for a bigger movie universe down the line. And this isn't some low-budget flick. With a $200 million budget, it's aiming big, like full-on blockbuster big. After Barbie's massive success for Mattel, they're clearly hoping this will kick off a whole franchise. Plus, Netflix is cooking up a She-Ra reboot in a totally separate universe, so Mattel's building its own kind of multiverse without all the crossover drama. Director Travis Knight is behind the wheel, and that's exciting. He's known for Kubo and the Two Strings and Bumblebee, so he knows how to blend heart with action, which is exactly what Masters of the Universe needs. As for the cast, Nicholas Galitzine is playing both Prince Adam and He-Man, needing to balance vulnerability with badassery. Jared Leto is Skeletor, a bold pick, and you've also got James Purefoy, Charlotte Riley, Marina Baccarin, Camila Mendes, and Idris Elba in key roles. There's a new character too, Susie, Adam's Earth friend, played by Sashir Zamata. Fan favorites like Ram Man, Fisto, Beastman, and Triclops are making appearances as well. Filming started early 2025, and already we've seen some cool sneak peeks. He-Man gripping his sword, Castle Grayskull, Skeletor with his Havoc staff, and some mysterious CGI creatures. It looks like a serious all-in project that He-Man fans have been waiting for. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, June 26th, 2026. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is officially coming out in June, and this one looks like it's going to be a game-changer. It was first announced back in January 2023 by James Gunn, and a bunch of DC fans got hyped, especially once Craig Gillespie was confirmed as the director. Now, what makes this version of Supergirl really different is her backstory. Unlike Superman, who got to grow up on Earth with a loving family, Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl, spent 14 brutal years on a dying Krypton. She saw a lot of horror before even getting to Earth, which explains why Gunn described her as much more hardcore. This darker, edgier Supergirl is being played by House of the Dragon star Millie Alcock, which feels like a perfect casting move. Gunn clearly wants to set a very different tone for the DCU, and introducing a version of Supergirl who's been through so much trauma adds a totally new layer. It's not the cheerful, always hopeful Supergirl we've seen before. This one's got some serious grit. And even though the original comic book by Tom King came out in 2022, this adaptation is shaping up to be its own thing. Anna Nogueira handled the screenplay, and the movie is only the second major DC film under the new Gunn and Peter Safran era following Superman, which lands in theaters in July 2025. So this film isn't just another origin story, it's helping define what the DCU is becoming. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Jason Momoa is officially playing Lobo in this movie. This is huge, because he's been vocal about wanting the role for years. Even though Lobo isn't in the comic that the movie's based on, it looks like they're bringing him in anyway, probably to set him up for other DCU appearances down the line. That kind of confirms that Momoa's days as Aquaman are over, which makes sense if the franchise is getting a full reset. But honestly, seeing Lobo cross paths with this battle-hardened Supergirl could be something wild. SpiderMan Brand New Day, July 31st, 2026. Now switching gears to the Marvel side of things, SpiderMan Brand New Day is set to hit theaters on July 31st, 2026. One of the biggest headlines around this movie is that Sadie Sink is joining the cast. She's already a fan favorite, and people have been trying to guess who she'll be playing. The sequel brings Tom Holland's Spider-Man back after a pretty long break since No Way Home dropped in 2021, so the anticipation is sky high. Although we don't have any official word from Sony or Marvel about who Sink is playing, a bunch of fan art has popped up imagining her as Mayday Parker. She's the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane from an alternate universe, specifically the Sam Raimi one. And even though Mayday only showed up briefly as a baby in Across the Spider-Verse, fans are hoping she'll have a much bigger role here. The timing of Brand New Day is super interesting too, because it lands right after Avengers Doomsday, so there's a strong chance the multiverse could still be in play. If that's the case, Sink playing Mayday would make a lot of sense, especially if they're tying her to Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst's versions of Peter and MJ. That'd be a pretty cool way to build on the legacy of the Raimi trilogy. So far it's just fan speculation, but it's pretty compelling. Plus, if Mayday is stuck on Earth 616, it gives them a solid reason to bring back Maguire's Spider-Man, even if it's just for a cameo. And come on, seeing Sink's Spider-Girl teaming up with Holland's Peter, that would be amazing. We'll probably start getting more solid answers once filming begins, but for now, it's fun to imagine all the possibilities this movie could bring. Clayface, September 11th, 2026. One of the more wild projects from DC Studios is a Clayface movie, and it's going to be a part of the main DC universe. We don't know much yet about the story or where exactly it fits in the timeline, but horror guru Mike Flanagan wrote the script after pitching it to DC. Not sure if he'll direct it, but if he does, Clayface could turn out pretty awesome. The Batman corner of the DCU is slowly coming together. We saw Batman briefly in Cersei's vision in Creature Commandos, and Clayface showed up there too. This Clayface movie is supposed to be a lower-budget horror flick, which is totally Mike Flanagan's thing. There are rumors it's inspired by The Fly, so expect some seriously creepy body horror stuff unlike anything else we've seen in the MCU or DCU. Oh, and Alan Tudyk voiced Clayface in Creature Commandos, so he might come back to voice him in the movie too. Avengers Doomsday, December 18th, 2026. The role of the X-Men in Avengers Doomsday is starting to become clearer. When Marvel revealed the cast, there were a bunch of expected names like Chris Hemsworth returning as Thor and Robert Downey Jr. surprisingly stepping in as Doctor Doom. But what really caught people off guard was the inclusion of several stars from Fox's original X-Men movies. Guys like Patrick Stewart and James Marsden showed up on the list. Now, with some new set photos coming out, it's looking like the X-Men will actually have a pretty big part to play in the story. One of the coolest reveals was a photo from the Avengers Doomsday set that showed what looks like the aftermath of a battle at the X-Mansion. The place seems to have taken a serious beating from the Sentinels, those classic giant robots that have been the X-Men's nightmare in the comics and previous adaptations. Even though the photo didn't show any heroes, seeing the X-Mansion wreck like that hints that the X-Men will be right in the middle of some intense action. It seems like an army of Sentinels will attack the iconic mansion, which probably sets up a big fight early on in the movie. This all ties back to the post-credits scene in the Marvels, which was the first big clue that the X-Men are officially coming to the MCU. Monica Rambeau ends up stuck in another universe, and there she meets a version of Beast who says he'll update Charles Xavier. Because Monica's presence might cause some kind of clash between Earth 616 and the X-Men's universe, it makes sense that the mutants would have a substantial role in Avengers Doomsday. The new set photos even suggest the X-Men will have their own story moments separate from the Avengers, Doctor Doom, and all the multiverse chaos. After all, Sentinels are classic X-Men villains, so it feels like a smart move to show the team's powers and dynamics early on by having them fight these foes. Honestly, the whole thing kind of reminds me of how X-Men 97 used the Sentinels to showcase the team's abilities. It looks like Marvel Studios might be borrowing that idea to give the movie a strong opening sequence that quickly gets fans up to speed on who's who in the X-Men lineup. Since Avengers Doomsday has a ton of characters to juggle, using an action scene to explain things could work really well. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, June 4th, 2027. Moving on to Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, this one's making a smart move by skipping 2026. That year is going to be packed with a bunch of big animated movies like Shrek 5, Toy Story 5, Minions 3, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie 2. Because all those family-friendly films will be competing for attention, it actually makes sense for Beyond the Spider-Verse to avoid jumping into that crowded mix. Families only take their kids to a few animated movies a year, so standing out in 2026 could be tough. Even though Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse isn't officially part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's clear the lines between the animated world and the live-action films are getting blurrier. The last movie in the series played with the idea of alternate realities, even referencing Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange, and including live-action versions of characters like the Prowler. Since Beyond the Spider-Verse is releasing in mid-2027 after Avengers Doomsday, Avengers Secret Wars, and SpiderMan Brand New Day hit theaters, it could actually use elements from those movies in its storyline. Another thing that might explain the later release is the schedules of Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the creative duo behind the Spider-Verse films. They're also working on a live-action sci-fi movie called Project Hail Mary, which comes out in 2026. Because they'll be busy with that, waiting until 2027 for Beyond the Spider-Verse gives them more time to focus and hopefully deliver a sequel that lives up to the first two films. So, sitting out 2026 might just be the best move for the franchise to stay strong and creative. Batman sequel, October 1st, 2027. Matt Reeves' The Batman was always meant to be the beginning of something bigger, a fresh trilogy of standalone stories centered on the Dark Knight. So it's really no surprise that a sequel is on the way. The Batman Part 2 is now set to hit theaters on October 1st, 2027, even though it was originally planned for a 2026 release. The movie will continue under the DC Elseworlds label, which basically means it's part of a separate timeline from the main DC universe. It'll pick up the story from the 2022 film and also tie into the Penguin series, which debuted in September 2024. Robert Pattinson is back as Bruce Wayne, but other details are still being kept under wraps. There's a bunch of rumors floating around that the new movie could take inspiration from the No Man's Land comic storyline, where Gotham gets hit by a massive earthquake and turns into total chaos. Matt Reeves hinted that this next chapter will dive even deeper into Gotham's rotten core and show how Bruce is constantly trying to fight forces that are way bigger than him. He said the script builds off stuff planted in the first movie, so we'll probably see sides of Batman we haven't seen before. With the script almost done, filming is expected to start in 2025. That should give the team plenty of time to meet the 2027 release date, which lands 5 years after the original. Colin Farrell is also coming back as Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, so expect the sequel to connect with events from his spin-off too. Avengers Secret Wars, December 17th, 2027. The multiverse in the MCU is bursting with potential thanks to Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, especially after the upcoming Fantastic Four First Steps. These movies are setting the stage for a wild mashup of Marvel characters from all over different timelines and universes. Doomsday already confirmed that mutants from Fox's X-Men movies will show up and team up with New Avengers and Thunderbolts. Secret Wars might take it up another notch by possibly bringing back fan favorites like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider, and even both versions of the Fantastic Four from the Fox movies. Plus, there's hope for the return of characters like Wesley Snipes' Blade, Jennifer Garner's Elektra, and of course, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool. But even with all this multiversal madness, some big team-ups we'd love to see might still not happen. One example, Tony Stark and Reed Richards. Even though Robert Downey Jr. is coming back, but this time as Dr. Doom, we probably won't get to see his Iron Man team up with Pedro Pascal's Mr. Fantastic. And that's a bummer, because let's be honest, that duo would be genius-level fun. But the cast for these movies is already massive. Doomsday has 27 major characters, and Secret Wars is expected to be even more crowded than Endgame. Honestly, Iron Man and Mr. Fantastic need their own movie to really shine as a team. Downey's version of Stark had a great run in the MCU, but he never got to meet other brainiacs like Hank Pym, Shuri, or Namor. And even when he did share screen time with characters like Black Panther, they didn't really talk. So as complete as his story felt, it missed some key connections from the comics, like the Illuminati group that included Stark, Reed Richards, and others working behind the scenes. Now, if the MCU decides to reboot after Secret Wars, there's still hope. We could get new versions of Iron Man and Mr. Fantastic who do get to meet and team up from the start. But Downey's probably not coming back for this. His farewell in Endgame was just too perfect. If there's a fresh universe coming, it'll likely focus on the newer cast, like Pedro Pascal's Fantastic Four. We might see those seeds planted as early as Doomsday or First Steps. Dynamic Duo, June 30th, 2028. Announced in late 2024, Dynamic Duo isn't your usual Batman and Robin story. Instead, this animated film will shine the spotlight on Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, two former Robins who ended up taking very different paths. Dick moved on to become Nightwing, while Jason became the Red Hood after a tragic run-in with the Joker. There's no confirmed timeline yet for when the movie takes place in their lives, but it might explore their early years before they fully stepped into their new roles. The movie is written by Coco writer Matthew Aldrich and will be brought to life by Swaybox Studios. What's interesting about Swaybox is they blend puppetry, live action, stop motion, and CGI in their animation, so this film could really stand out visually. Arthur Mintz, one of Swaybox's co-founders, is directing, and it's being produced by DC Studios heads Peter Safran and James Gunn. Invincible, TBA. Invincible fans have a live-action movie to look forward to. Even though it was announced way back in 2017, it's still in the works with Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, and Robert Kirkman behind it. The animated series on Prime Video definitely boosted interest, and it's been so successful that it's making turning it into a movie both easier and trickier. Kirkman's been giving little updates, and while he hasn't revealed much, he's still optimistic it'll happen. He did mention how the animated show complicates things since each season reshapes the story, which makes it harder to lock in a film version. That said, the movie is still very much alive behind the scenes. There's no cast confirmed yet, and whether J.K. Simmons will play Omni-Man again is still up in the air. Kirkman joked about Steven Yeun switching roles, but nothing's been made official. Still, with the show doing so well, Season 2 and even the upcoming Season 3 scoring big, it's only a matter of time before Mark Grayson flies into live action. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.